they probably don't really believe in him as their long-term franchise quarterback. And from my perspective, like even like whether you want to blame the play calling or the offensive scheme or the game planning, Jalen Hurts really hasn't played all that well either for what they've, even with what they've asked him to do, he hasn't played that well. I think we've seen his obvious deficiencies.
Mac guys, here we on Birds 365. We add third to the mix. One of the best covering the Eagles day in, the day out. He does it for Philly boys. He's going to do it for us for the next 20 minutes. Jimmy Kempski, part of the Malton Mafia. McMullen's got his own mafia, but Malton guys got to stick together. Jimmy Kempski from Philly Voice jumps aboard. How are you, JK?
Good, guys. Sorry about the confusion. How are you?
Good, Jimmy. So I want to start off about your own self-scout. What did you do during the mini bye? Where was your self-scout?
I had my daughter this weekend, so we went bowling on Friday, and we went to my mother's house in Long Beach Island on Saturday, and on Sunday we laid around and did nothing. She was on her iPad all day while I watched the NFL Red Zone for a rare chance to do that all day on Sunday. So yeah, it's a good weekend.
Since you went to LBI, I have a question for you. You've been covering Eagles for a good couple of years now, but prior to when you hadn't established yourself as a major Eagle beat guy, have you ever watched an Eagles-Giants game on Long Beach Island?
I'm sure I have at some point. I'm curious why you ask.
Because I did Memorial Day way back when they still played on Labor Day weekend before the NFL pushed it back. I spent a Labor Day weekend because you like to be on LBI on Labor Day weekend, and in a sports bar, and half of it was diehard Eagle fans,
right,
and half of it was diehard Giant fans. And I mean, I thought there was going to be blood spilled on the floor in that place that day. It was great because I was kind of neutral and just sitting back and observing. It's almost the dividing line of New Jersey as to Giant fans and Eagle fans. South of LBI, all Eagles. North of LBI, all Giants. I was just wondering if you ever experienced that.
Yeah, the next one up is Seaside, which is definitively New York, and then LBI. I think it's more Philly than it is either of the New York teams, but it's definitely the one that's like the most even of all the shore towns in terms of New York versus Philly. So yeah, you're right. Do you remember what bar you were at?
Oh shoot, Jimmy! When they were playing,
so many bars.
We're talking 25 years ago, somewhere there about. So the answer to your question is no, I don't remember.
Okay.
All right, I guess we got to talk about the Eagles, Jimmy. So I'm going to throw my thesis out there too.
Okay.
So this is my own self-scout. Well, when it comes to the Eagles, I got a lot of self-scouting to do when it comes to my life. But anyway, to me, when we talk about the Eagles offense, there's only two answers. So if Nick Sirianni and the offensive coaching staff believe in Jalen Hurts, they have a legit terrible system. Just awful.
Yes.
If they don't, it explains a lot. Do you agree with that? And obviously, I think the coach, not protecting the quarterback is actually the worst scenario.
So on your first point, I think what you're getting at is they're running an offense that is not accentuating the strengths and trying to limit the weaknesses of Jalen Hurts. I couldn't possibly agree more on that. I think we saw week one, they came out in Atlanta and they had a really good game plan for Jalen Hurts and this offense and the skills of their players within it. And then we really haven't seen it since. I think against the Chiefs, they had some good offensive production, but it was, of course, against arguably the worst defense in the NFL. So, everyone's had success against that defense. And I wouldn't necessarily put their success in that game on the game plan itself. I just think they were able to, any team can do whatever they want against that defense. So I've really only seen one good game plan this season out of 6. And the idea that that they don't run the ball at all. We saw in this last Buccaneers game that they had one run with their running backs in the entire first half. They ran it a little bit later and actually had some success with it, as they've had throughout the rest of the season. It's just, you look at like Todd Bowles and what he wants to accomplish going into every game. And it's sort of similar to what Jim Schwartz, your favorite, wanted to accomplish going into every game. He wanted to shut down the run. And once you shut down the run, you make the other offense, one-dimensional, and then they become much easier to defend. Now, whether that's the ideal, way to run a defense is to be debated, but that's what they like to do. And when you come out and you're the Eagles and you go, okay, well, they're a good run defense, so we're just not going to run it. Well, guess what? You just achieved their number one priority heading into the game by wanting to stop the run. So, yeah, I think what this coaching staff is doing is they're turning people that understand that it's a passing league and that, you win by throwing and chunk plays and all that. And they're turning those people into, the run the ball freaks. So I just haven't seen any kind of balance. And the way that this offense is structured personnel wise, with a quarterback who can run the ball, with a running back who does have some explosive traits. You got young receivers who, they're going to get better, and you got to give them a chance to grow. But the reality is they're still young, and they're not going to be like the focus. They shouldn't be the focus of your offense. And an offensive line that's missing multiple starters for the entire season, and you just keep chucking it up constantly, like play after play. I just don't get it. And then the second part of your question, which was what again, John?
It was. So it's either one of two. It's a fork in the road. Either the coach doesn't believe in the quarterback,
okay, right,
and he's trying to mask its deficiencies, or it's a legit terrible offense. So my theory is it would be better if the coach doesn't believe in the quarterback. So do you think this organization, this coaching staff, more importantly, believes in the quarterback? I don't think they do right now.
Yeah, I wonder if they have an offense that they want to run, and they want to see if Jalen Hurts can run the offense that they want to run, as opposed to running an offense that accentuates his strengths. And if ultimately, they want to run an offense that Jalen Hurts isn't capable of running, then I would say no, they probably don't really believe that much in him, or they'd go out of their way to, accommodate what he does well. So I'm kind of with you that that they probably don't really believe in him as their long-term franchise quarterback. And from my perspective, whether you want to blame the play calling or the offensive scheme or the game planning, Jalen Hurts really hasn't played all that well either for what they've asked him to do. He hasn't played that well. I think we've seen his obvious deficiencies. And when I look at the 6 games that he's played so far, just on a stock up or stock down kind of basis, I'd say his stock was up after the Falcons game, and after the Chiefs game, his stock was down in all the others, with the exception of the Panthers, which would, kind of go either way on that. So I'd say, 2 stock up games, 3 stock down games, 1 neutral. So as far as him making the claim to be the franchise quarterback in 2022 and going forward, I don't think that is looking very likely right now.
No, I'll give you the point of the year when the Eagles season, pardon the pun, went to shit. When Jalen Hurts couldn't play exhibition game number 2 because he got sick right before the game started, then they had to rush him to the hospital. Well, they didn't get a chance to put him into that game. So they couldn't decide what kind of offense they were going to have. They were still determining what Jalen Hurts can and can't do. And you can't determine anything while the kid's at the hospital. So that's when the season went to shit. But all right, that's besides the point. Jimmy, one of the reasons I had to have you on this week, we love you have you on every week, but we don't ask anyone to do that. But I said we got to have Kempski this week because you understand compensatory draft picks for free agents better than anyone I know. Yeah. You write about it enough, and I try and follow it every time, and I still get lost. I punched it up myself and tried to read the rules and regulations. Yeah. I still don't understand. So I give you a ton of credit for at least having a partial grasp on it, because I have none. What would have been the compensatory compensation for Zach Ertz if he had stayed here, gone free agent? I know you got to speculate a little bit as to what kind of contract he would get. What do you think the Eagles would have gotten in exchange if at the end of the season they ended up losing more free agents than they gained?
I don't think you would have scored a huge contract. So just in terms of the level of compensatory pick is dependent on how much money a free agent makes with his new team. He doesn't have 10 years of accrued seasons. He's only on his 9th after the season. The max that you can get for a player that has 10 accrued seasons is a 5, so that doesn't apply to him. But I think that, based on the money that I would project him to get next year in free agency would be somewhere in the ballpark of, I don't know, 6-7 million a year, which would put him in the ballpark of like a 5 or a 6, probably closer to a 5 than a 6. But you only get a compensatory pick if you lose more qualifying free agents than you gain. And I think in the Eagles case, they probably are going to gain more free agents than they're going to lose. I mean, they already locked up two of their guys that are scheduled to become free agents in Jordan Mailata and Josh Sweat. So there really isn't that much that's like great that's left over. Like maybe Derek Barnett leaves as a compensatory player to some other team, and he might count toward the formula. But ultimately, I think the Eagles are going to sign more guys than they gain next offseason. So I don't think they were really going to be in line for a compensatory pick for Zach Ertz anyway. And honestly, I think the compensation that they got for him in return, the 5th round pick and this developmental cornerback and Tay Gowan, I think it's fine. But also factor into the equation that they're going to save roughly around $5.2 million in salary that they would have otherwise paid Zach Ertz. So they can take that money and they can, apply that to some other use this next offseason.
Yeah, and that's the first time in a while, Jimmy, that it's projected they're going to sign more guys than they lose, because as we went through the Super Bowl window and they were trying to push that window open year after year after year, it was always they were going to lose more than they gained. So that's the key part of it. I agree with you. That's why the Eagles moved Zach Ertz early, but also Dallas Goedert as well. It was pretty clear to me when Howie Roseman said, there's not going to be a discount for Dallas Goedert. So we know how the Eagles work. Jordan Mailata, team-friendly deal. Josh Sweat, team-friendly deal. Dallas Goedert, his reps seem to be smart enough to know, if we go get to the open market, we're going to get paid. So how much did it have to do with just clearing space for Dallas Goedert to be the true tight end one in this offense?
Yeah, it's a good question. And well, first of all, on the field, it clears him to get, Zach Ertz played like 88% of the snaps against Tampa. So those snaps will now fully go to, with Dallas Goedert being out, of course, with COVID, he'll get, right around 80-90 snaps per game, or 80-90% of the snaps per game going forward. So I think that's good for him being able to produce like a number one tight end. He hasn't had the opportunity to do that over the course of his career. But in terms of the money aspect, the one thing that the Eagles kind of have in their back pocket is that the franchise tag for tight ends isn't really it's not that costly. It's going to be just under it's projected anyway to be just under 11 million. So if they can't get a long-term deal done, then they can always tag them and have them for at least one more year. But you look at the contracts that tight ends got in free agency last offseason, and I don't have them off the top of my head or in front of me on my screen or whatever, but you got look like Jonnu Smith and Hunter Henry and, the guys that got, more money than anticipated from teams like the Patriots and so on. And, I would project him to be in the ballpark of, like right now, I would project him to be in the ballpark of asking for somewhere around like 13, 14, 15 million a year, which might sound crazy, but the cap is going up. And like you said, I think his representation is smart enough to know what his value is and what he could, get on the open market if it came to it.
And it's going to be costly, but you got to, with a position that you plan on using, and if they're just going to go to one tight end and make them the tight end one, yeah, he kind of justifies that kind of layout for the Eagles to do. All right, for both you guys, since you're both Eagle beat reporters and you have to ask the questions, Lane Johnson is going to be made available to the media sometime here relatively soon, dealing with some very difficult issues and some personal issues. He put out a statement on social media yesterday. How do you handle that when you get Lane Johnson up on a Zoom call, or you guys don't have the ability to go to his locker like you used to, which is unfortunate if you had a good relationship with the guy? There's some things that Eagle fans want to know, but you want to be a human being and you don't want to put a guy on a spot or anything like that. How do you handle something like that with Lane Johnson?
John, you want that?
Well,
I want you
Jimmy,
both to answer, by the way.
Jimmy's more of a human being than me. I'm just going to ask the question. No, I mean, I would just ask Lane if he wants to talk about it. If he does, he'll talk about it. If he doesn't, you go in another direction. That's how I would handle it.
Yeah, Brandon Brooks, when he missed games in, what was it, 2016? Thereafter, he, spoke for like 20, 30 minutes at his locker about his anxiety issues. And his main message was, that, for people that do suffer from anxiety, you're not alone. So if you have these issues, go get help. Because I think what a lot of these people do that have anxiety is they bottle it up and they keep it from their friends and family, as Lane Johnson mentioned in his statement that he made public on Twitter or whatever. So it'll be interesting to see if, Lane talks at length about, the anxiety issues that he suffers from. And I'm sure that'll be his message, if and when he does speak. But as John said, if he doesn't want to get into the details of what he's suffering from, then I don't think, us as reporters will push him all that hard on, getting some kind of answer on it.
Then there's a good possibility that Ben Simmons today says he's suffering from anxiety when he meets the media. And they shut that bad boy down real quick.
Well, he might be suffering from anxiety, but there is a football part of Lane Johnson as well. The trade deadline is coming up. We've already seen one deal, Jimmy. Andre Dillard played okay. When forced into the lineup at first as a injury replacement for Jordan Mailata. Then Lane Johnson had his issues. Jordan had to kick over there. In theory, if Lane's back, if Lane's ready to play, you're back to where you were. Lane Johnson at right tackle, Jordan Mailata at left tackle. Andre Dillard has more value, but do you press pause a little bit now? Because long term, you start to think about, okay, where's Lane going to be? It's not only personal issues, but he's also still having swelling in the ankle.
Yeah.
There's physical issues. Do you revisit trying to sell off Andre Dillard, or do you take advantage? Hey, played pretty well. Everybody needs tackles. Let's get as much as we can right now.
Yeah, I think if an offer presents itself that is too hard to pass up for Andre Dillard, then you take it. But I don't think you're in a rush to deal him like you maybe were previously. And we saw, the last 4 weeks where they moved Jordan Mailata to right tackle. And, I think he played okay there. But I think ultimately his best spot, obviously, is at left tackle. Andre Dillard can't play anything else. He's a left tackle or bust. He's not going to play guard. We already saw what happened when he moved over to the right side against the Seahawks a few years ago. He's just going to be the left tackle. And if Jordan Mailata is going to have that spot occupied, then, something's got to give there. And you only have him. So Dillard is probably at his most valuable right now to some team at the trade deadline that has we saw Taylor Lewan go down last night, for example, for the Titans. Other teams are going to have, injured left tackle somewhere along the line, and just left tackle play in general across the NFL. A lot of teams need him. So, he can help a contender. He's better than, a number of these other teams starting left tackles, in my opinion. So if you can get something really good for him, then sure, go ahead and do it now. And I guess from my perspective, if it's a 3, I'd probably do that. But like you said, you shouldn't be really in a rush maybe to deal him now. If a good offer doesn't present itself. The guy that I think actually might have some trade value coming up here is Steven Nelson, because you look at all the teams that have just major cornerback issues throughout the league. And again, going back to the Titans last night, they lose Caleb Farley to a torn ACL probably. They already have a couple other guys down. We've seen the Eagles play teams like the 49ers, who are starting Josh Norman, and then you have the Buccaneers are starting, they're pulling Richard Sherman off the street and they're starting him. So there are a lot of teams that could use a player like Steven Nelson, who doesn't cost a lot in terms of what he's making this year. He was only going to be a 1-year Band-Aid for the Eagles anyway this year, and I think he's shown to be a legitimate, solid starting cornerback through these first 6 games. So if they are going to make another move, I would have him as sort of the number 1 guy that's possible to be moved at the trade deadline.
Tay Gowan to the rescue.
That's right.
Stepping in and playing for the Eagles.
Howie's playing 3D chess. Everyone else is playing checkers.
Yeah. We'll see about okay, then that will be my final question. Should Howie even be playing chess? Because the Eagles, for the first 6 games of the season, played the 3rd hardest schedule of any team in the NFL.
Yeah.
From here on out, they played the easiest schedule
Yeah.
in the National Football League. Giants twice, Jets,
Yeah.
the Washington football team
Washington.
twice. Their schedule really lightens up. Now, the Raiders are 4-2 this week. I think they're kind of soft 4-2, but that's just me.
Yeah.
Should they even be thinking about selling, or do they still have a legit chance to compete?
Oh, they should be thinking
for a
about selling.
playoff spot?
Yeah, they should be selling. I mean, there's no doubt. I mean, you look at the NFC East, the Cowboys are going to win this division by like Thanksgiving. They're 5-1. There's no other team within 3 games of them. They have a head-to-head win over the Eagles already. Eagles are essentially 4 games, 4 games behind them right now with that head-to-head
division
win.
is done, but as Johnny pointed out earlier in the show, they're 1 game out of the last wild card spot as of now.
1 game.
1 game.
That's
one
true.
1 game, Jimmy Kempski.
True, but there's also only two teams. No, I'm sorry.
Yeah, they're way down that list. Yeah,
there are 3 teams behind them in the NFC right now. They're based on tiebreakers. It's the Seahawks, the Giants, and the Lions. So, I mean, when you look at this team, I mean, what is there's maybe some value in getting like these young guys playoff experience, but I think that, you know, if you can get value for your older players, also get them off your books at the trade deadline by being able to sell off some of these guys, then I think that's more valuable, and you know, getting more draft capital. I think that's more valuable than getting stomped out in the first round by the 2 seed. that's just me personally. So, you know, I don't know, like, and like even the idea of them getting a wild card. You know, you mentioned that they do have an easy schedule coming up, and that's, you know, certainly valid. But I just don't see this roster winning a wild card, even if they were going for it anyway. Like, I just don't think it's a very good team. I mean, we looked at, like, they have 2 wins. One was against the Falcons, who stink, and then the other was against the Panthers. The Eagles didn't play well in that game. Like, they were lucky that the Panthers sort of like played worse than them in that game, or else, you know, they're looking at like 1-5 right now. So, you know, we'll see what happens in Las Vegas. And then I don't think the game in Detroit is like a layup. I think they certainly should win that game in Detroit, but I don't think it's a layup. So we'll see what happens after these next 2 road games, and then going forward. And then they have the Chargers, I believe, the week thereafter. So, you know, even if they are able to beat Detroit in you know, week 8 or whatever that is, and they lose these other 2 games, you know, you're looking at the record's 3-6 at that point. And for sure, if you're 3-6, I think you're selling off assets at that point.
It is something we will certainly keep our eye on. Jimmy, glad we were finally able to corral you. Thanks for coming on board. We'll get back to you in a month or so, and enjoy the rest of your week and going back to work on Sunday.
Appreciate it, guys. Have a good one.
Thanks, Jim.
Jimmy Kempski, Philly voice, here with us on Birds 365. All right, coming up next, we're going to go back-to-back guests because we ran a little late with Jimmy K. Usually we put a segment in between the guests. We'll go back-to-back guests here because our boy, Rob Motti from the Associated Press, covers the entire National Football League, did Eagles centric for years. Now he covers it all. And somehow he always gets back up to Philadelphia for the games. Wonder how that works. We'll find out from Motti when we punch him up. Rob Motti, Associated Press, next here on Birds 365.